Hello Epic 7, and welcome to season number 8 of Ancient Inheritance and my guide on how to not be terrible at this event. This time around a great deal has been changed, and a lot of what I'll go over here are just best guess assumptions. However, whether you're a veteran to Ancient Inheritance or brand spanking new, I hope that this will serve as a solid dive into tips and tricks to help you succeed and make the most out of this event. Before we jump in and talk about mechanics, let's talk about the sweet rewards. This year, Ancient Inheritance is giving us a speed set and an HP set. And not just any speed and HP sets, most of these stats look really good. There are very few unwanted or wasted stats. Well, okay, the stats on the boots is a little bit of an unfortunate combo. You want two or the other two and not really a mixture of them because not a lot of bruisers use speed set, so when it comes to the boots, here's my recommendation. Just be lucky. Now, some of you may be thinking, but Wulf, I'm pretty new to this game, and I don't have many units, and my gear is pretty bad, so I can't compete in this. Well, look, that's just not true. I can't emphasize this enough. This content is for everyone, even you. You see, in the past, Ancient Inheritance has used several normalization mechanics that let this event be accessible to everybody, and I see no reason why they would change that with this season. These normalization mechanics are so profound that everyone can compete on pretty much the same level. You'll be able to compete alongside with people who've been playing the game for upwards of 5 years and spending tons of money. Let me explain. First, there's an enlisting system, which only allows you to draft a handful of units, 12 at the start. You'll get additional slots as you level up. So you don't need a deep pool of units. Second, and this is the best part, every single unit, once you enter Ancient Inheritance, is immediately upgraded to level 60, 6-star, max awakened, max mola, max imprint, ready to go right out of the box like a fully upgraded unit. Now, unfortunately, once you leave Ancient Inheritance, it reverts back to its prior form, but you can legit use a level 5 unit that you've done nothing to at all, and it will perform just like a maxed out unit. But what about gear, you ask? Well, that's covered too. The third normalization mechanic is that gear stats don't really matter. I mean, they matter a little, but it's not a lot. It's like a 10-to-1 ratio, and what I mean by that is the substats you see on your gear, only 10% of that impacts your stats inside of Ancient Inheritance. So, for example, let's say you've got speed boots with 40 speed on them as the main stat. Well, you're only going to see 4 speed of that reflected inside of AI. And those boots that have 20% crit chance on it, yeah, that's only going to give you 2% crit chance. It's such a small impact from gear that you could even use unleveled gear and still succeed. Now, what does matter is gear sets. The full impact of gear set bonuses is carried over, so you'll still get the benefit from crit chance off of the crit set, you'll get the full benefit off of the speed set, you'll get the full benefit of the bonuses for having an attack set, and of course special things like lifesteal, counter set, pen set, all of these matter. So you can take some of the most trash gear you've got and cobble together sets for the set bonuses and jump right into the event and compete with the whales. Oh, and as a side note, artifacts and exclusive equipment work with full value. There's no normalization to artifacts or exclusive equipment. So where do stats come from, you ask? Well, that brings us to the fourth and final mechanic for Ancient Inheritance, and that is the mechanic that puts us all on an equal footing. We all enter AI with the exact same stats on our units, plus or minus a little nudge from the 10% from gear stats. The additional stats come from a special elemental enhancement system in Ancient Inheritance. You see, in AI, you don't build units, you build elements. As you level your elements, all of the units from that element will get percent bonuses which impact all the stats of all the units of that element. This is where 99% of your stats are going to come from. To level your elements, you need to fight monsters that are weaker to that element. So, for example, to level fire elements, you'll need to attack monsters showing the green elemental symbol. To level light elements, you'll need to attack monsters showing the dark elemental symbol, and so on. There is also a secondary leveling system to boost your exploration level, and this system gives you exploration EXP, which you gain from using objects or even just walking around. As your exploration levels go up, you'll gain special perks like additional unit slots, more provisions, treasure chest keys, relics, and so on. So the first big tip I have is to focus on only 2 or 3 elements tops. I can't stress this enough. You want to be an asset to your guild, you want to proc really high numbers, pick 2 or 3 elements and stick to them. Ignore the other elements. You do not want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. This is the #1 mistake people make in Ancient Inheritance, and more than anything, it can stunt your growth. Now let's talk about what's required to participate in Ancient Inheritance. First, you'll need to be level 40, which you probably already are by the time you join a guild. And your guild will need at least 16 members to initiate Ancient Inheritance. Now, don't worry, if people drop out of your guild after you started and you drop below 16 members, you won't be locked out. Once you're in, you're in. However, you really want to be in a guild that has very active members, a lot of very active members, because you see, at its core, AI is guild-based PvE. Your advancement in this is tied to your guildmates, and theirs is tied to you. So you really want to be part of a guild with a lot of active members, and this will really min-max your Ancient Inheritance experience as well as your entire Epic 7 experience. So if you're in a guild that's falling short of expectations, hit me up. Though space is limited, I do have several guilds that are recruiting from early game to top-end game level of play. So if you need help finding a new home, click that link in the description, jump in my Discord, and check out my guild recruitment hall to get in touch with one of our many recruiters, or drop me a DM directly and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Now that I've covered joining guilds, and I hope I've driven home by now that this event is for everyone and anybody can participate, let's talk about how to prepare for this event and the 3 things that matter above all else in Ancient Inheritance: gear sets, elements, and artifacts. First, let's talk about gear sets. Though gear stats don't really matter that much, gear set bonuses certainly do. Now, because of the fast way that leveling in Ancient Inheritance ramps up your skills, you will probably find that by level 5 or 6, you don't really need any more boosts to stats like effectiveness, effect resistance, or crit chance, or even crit damage. Those will probably all cap out. So I don't recommend sets that boost those stats. Avoid destruction set, hit set, crit chance set, is kind of what I'm saying. These highlighted sets are really good sets to focus on for Ancient Inheritance. Top of the list, of course, is attack set, as well as rage set. Attack set has no functional limit, and rage set will help you with almost every single mob you fight in Ancient Inheritance because they will pretty much always have a debuff on them. Rage set is money. Lifesteal is also especially good. Lifesteal will allow you to be self-sustaining, and that's very important with the very combat-centric style that Season 8 is going with. In fact, there are some fights where just lifesteal set and maybe a healing artifact will be all you need. So, in AI, you get a chance to slap random gear on units you've never thought you would use because what's good in AI is often pretty far from meta. It's hard to provide a list of units for each element that I think will be overly strong, as we have no idea what the boss or ward mechanics are going to be like. I think you want to look for units that have specific things, like look for units who can apply a defense break, like Fire Ken. Look for units that self-heal, like the Ravis. Look for units that cleanse, like Mediator Queric. Look for units who dual attack, like Camilla. Look for units who heal, with barriers especially, like Amelia. But remember to stick to 2 to 3 elements, and wrap your brain around coming up with teams of 1 to 2 unit fighters to make fighting the monsters really efficient. Self-sustaining units are going to be huge for this. Now, let's take a moment and talk about artifacts and exclusive equipment. You will get the full stat and effect bonus of exclusive equipment and artifacts. There is no normalization process for them at all. In the early levels, it's really good to have artifacts that boost crit chance, like Midnight Bloom or Black Hand of the Goddess or Azure Comet, things like that. The same can be said for artifacts that boost effectiveness in cases where debuffs are needed. But once you level a little bit, you'll find that these stats aren't needed anymore. Your stats in AI are more than enough to stick debuffs, and you're capped out at 100% crit chance. So at that point in time, you want to swap out the artifacts for more suitable artifacts. I know, swapping artifacts around is a little bit expensive, but I think you'll find it's worth your while to move artifacts around, especially right before more important fights. I mean, you want those sweet rewards or not? Now, let's talk about what we know about the enhancement system. The elemental enhancement system, I'm assuming this system will be basically the same as the class enhancement system was in prior seasons. In that system, all units of a class got the same stats. All warriors had exactly the same attack. All weavers had exactly the same HP, and so on. I'm sure they're not going to do that with elements. I mean, how could you? How could you give Destina the same base stats as Zahak? Just because they're both green. I mean, how could they? How could you give Destina the same stats as Zahak just because they're both green? So I suspect all units will go in with their base stats plus a small boost from your gear sub stats and gear sets into E's and RFX, etc. But you're going to work off their base sets, and then the elements will boost the stats from there. So if I'm right on this, that means 5 stars will naturally have a stat advantage over 3 and 4 stars. But don't count 3 and 4 stars out. Some of the 3 and 4 star kits are insane inside of Ancient Inheritance. Bottom line is, once you're inside of the event, your Destina and Zahak will have the same stats, give or take, as a whale who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the game. And leveling your units is entirely dependent on your actions inside of AI. As you fight monsters that represent an element weak to you, you gain experience towards your element. For example, if you attack a monster tagged as fire, you will gain elemental experience for your water units. This will level your water elemental units, boosting all of their stats at once. This is the reason you want to limit yourself to just 2 or 3 elements. You don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. If you spread it all out equally, you will level so slowly that your guild will progress to higher floors and you will just get stomped due to being underleveled. As to what element to pick, look, everyone needs to make their own decision when it comes to elements. My first bit of advice is to maybe steer clear of taking light and dark as your start elements. You see, light and dark don't have a deep pool of healers or self-sustaining units. You got Doris and Blaze Dingo, and it gets real thin on healers and self-sustained units from that point on. I think Light and Dark has a lot of assets and will bring a lot of power to your team, but don't take both of them as your starter. That's my only big chunk of advice. Compared to RGB, the depth of units in RGB is so much larger and so much stronger. Fire and Earth seem incredibly strong. Though Ice doesn't have a lot of good DPS options, it's loaded with healing and support that would actually pair well with Light and Dark. I think it's important for the guild to have diversity in elements. I'm sure some of the bosses and wardens will be weak to specific elements, and you'll need guild members repping those elements to progress quickly, so don't try to talk everybody into the same elements. My plan this season, right now, I'm going to go with Fire and Earth. And depending on how quickly I level, I'll toss in Light or Dark later, one or the other. You see, Fire and Earth immediately unlocks Tam and Asaria, as well as powerhouse units like Hazel, who boosts all fire teams, and Helga, who boosts all earth teams, Ken, who is loaded with dual attacks, self-sustain, and debuffs, Landy, who on Bloodstone can be a healer, pushes the CR pushes herself and speed buffs the team, Fire Ravi, who can solo almost anything, and Green Charles. Yes, Charles. Look at that man's kit. Read his skills carefully. He's going to be great in this. I do like that none of the elements are bad. I mean, like Thieves were in prior Ancient Inheritance. If you pick Thieves, you were in shambles. But no matter which element you pick, there are good options for you to use. So just don't pick too many elements and stick to elements where you've got some really good strong units. Now, as we discussed, the way you level the elements is doing fights. You want to be frugal on how you do your fights, because once you fight a monster and win, you can't use those units for the rest of the day. They are grayed out, just like they died in Guild Wars. So pick a unit who can solo or 2-man fight normal monsters. Units with built-in healing, like Ravi, or lifesteal sets, like, well, whoever you have a lifesteal set on. Units like Vildred can units like Violet can probably solo a lot of this stuff. Or 2-man combos where you run a DPS along with a healer, like Luna plus Angelic Montmorency. This will let you do more fights with fewer units. You only start with 12 units, and you can't reuse units in a fight, so if you take 4 units into a fight, you can only do 3 fights. But if you take 1 or 2 units into a fight, you can do many fights. Also, there's no real penalty for failure, versus normal monsters, that is. If you attack a monster and you die, you only lose 1 provision and your units will still be available. The monster will also not lose a heart, so try it, right? Try to fight it with just 1 or 2 units, and if you fail, throw a Soul Weaver onto the team to finish it off. Like I said though, this is only for normal monster fights. If you lose to a mini-boss, a warden, or a floor boss, you lose those units for the day. Now, you see these monsters and how they have hearts over their head? That's how many times they can be defeated before disappearing, for the entire guild. So, after the 3rd kill, this guy will vanish. So don't be too greedy. If you're in a guild with 30 members and there's only like 40 monsters on the map, maybe you only do 4 to 6 fights. Let your guild level up with you. Strategists in general should help plan this out. The last thing you want is for the boss to unlock and your strongest members can't hit the boss because they ran around, used up all their attacks leveling, and it's left to the unleveled guys who have no way to level their elements up to go in and fight the boss all Leroy Jenkins style. Make sure everybody has a few fights to level on. Also be aware you can only fight the boss twice per day. So maybe hold back a few units, 4 to 6 units, so that you can fight the boss. Another change from seasons 1 through 7 is how the floors work. To progress, you need to unlock the boss. This is done by increasing his rage counter by killing his friends, which is great because that's how you level your units. Once you make him angry enough, he will appear and everybody can go over and attack him. As I said before, you can only attack him twice per day, so make sure you hold back 6 to 8 units to fight the boss twice. Once the boss drops to 50% health, he realizes he's made a horrible mistake and runs away, and his buddies the Wardens show up. The Wardens are hyper tough mini-bosses with special mechanics. Once your guild kills off all of the Wardens, the boss is revealed and you can fall on him like raptors to a doe and finish him off. Once he is dead, everybody gets the loot reward for killing the floor boss who is currently inside of AI, and the portal to floor number 2 will appear and you can proceed to floor number 2. That's a lot of walking. More than prior seasons. You gotta run around, kill mobs, run over, kill the boss to half health, run over to wherever the Wardens are, kill the Wardens, run all the way back, kill the boss, and then you can go to floor number 2. To help deal with this additional amount of walking and limiting us to only attacking the boss twice per day, they've reduced the floor count from 4 to 3. So we only have 3 floors this time around, and they have, at least for this season, increased it from a 2-week event to a 3-week event. Hopefully that gives us all enough time to complete this whole thing. Another huge tip is that on day 1, when Ancient Inheritance drops, make sure the first thing you do that day, like before you brush your teeth, log into the game and get on the map. I'm not kidding. Make this the first thing you do. Even if you don't have time to play Epic 7, just enter the dungeon, have your unit appear on the map, select your starting relic, and then you can exit and go do whatever it is you needed to do for the day. The reason for this is that if the rest of your guild collects rewards, you're only eligible to get the group rewards when you're inside of AI. If, God forbid, they kill the floor 1 boss and you're not on the map yet, you don't get that loot. You don't get that 88 piece of gear for killing the boss. If they open a guild chest, you don't get the loot from the gear chest unless you are on the map. So, especially if your guild is active, you want to make sure you're on the map, so that any rewards they collect while you're AFK, you will get too. You don't want to miss anything, right? As for that starting relic, this is a decision that will impact your entire Ancient Inheritance event, and unfortunately, we don't know what many of the relic choices are. We've only seen a handful of the relics. I think that ones that increase movement and ones that boost fighting efficiency will likely be the most favorable relics to start with. We'll know more when we explore that on Monday. Now, speaking of efficiency, provisions are unforgiving. There is no undo button, so go slow. Count the hexes, take time to make sure you have the provisions needed to get the job done. So, to help plan your best course of action, the brilliant minds of the Bread team have started making maps. I joined Bread many seasons ago, and helped him with the map making team, and since then the team has expanded to include a small but hard-working group of map makers who scrape data off the Asian guilds who are a day ahead of us to make maps like these. These maps will help you identify the best pathing to get the elemental fights you need, while converging on the locations of the wardens and the boss, and to show you where loot can be found. These maps will always be posted in the descriptions of my videos, as well as in my Discord. Feel free to copy them, these are for your use. Use them to help organize your guild, or even just help with your own personal movements. And finally, what I believe is the last big change. Treasure chests. Gone are the days of loot goblins. No more loot goblins obsessing on chests. Loot goblins who can't think about anything but chests. Loot goblins who are so focused on chests that they don't help the guild. You can no longer just loot these chests and buy from the shop without helping your guild. Treasure chests now require keys to open them. And the only way to get keys is as a drop from doing fights or as a perk from leveling. So you need to be an active contributing member in AI to get the keys to get that personal loot. And the loot in the shop is very worth getting. Well, now that I've talked your ear off and turned what I intended to be a short video into a pretty long one, I'm going to wrap things up for this introduction video. The too long didn't listen is that a lot has changed, and I'm left with more questions than answers. To help with that, I plan to stream my daily AI pushes live on Twitch at 8 AM Eastern Time. So make sure you click that link in the description of the video and follow me on Twitch so you can come and be a part of the adventures. I'll also publish the VODs on YouTube, so for anyone that isn't going to be available at those times, you'll be able to check out the VODs for reference. Hopefully this will serve as a form of a walkthrough guide to help you along in case you need some assistance. It's really nice to have strategies for fighting the bosses, seeing the maps in advance, and I hope you guys just really enjoy these videos. We've put together a fun team, and I think it's going to be a blast. Final note is I want to remind all of you that if you are not thrilled with your guild, get out. Click the link in that description, join my Discord, check my guild recruitment hall, or hit me up directly. You really want to be in a good, active, functional guild for Ancient Inheritance. It will make your entire Epic 7 existence that much better as well. Well, that's all of it for now. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, but before you go, remember to smash everything. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, smash Sermia, smash the bell, smash it all. And I'll see you guys Monday morning as we go tomb raiding.